Commander Liam Carter stood at the window of Earth's orbital station and watched the alien ship approach. It was massive, at least 20 times larger than anything humans had ever built. The vessel gleamed like polished silver under the sun's rays. Carter felt his heart race. This was it. First contact. "Sir, they're hailing us again," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Carter nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered to life. The alien that appeared had translucent blue-green skin and 8 eyes arranged in a circle around what seemed to be a head. Its body was thin and tall, with 4 arms that moved with fluid grace. "Greetings, humans," it said, its words translated through the computer. "I am Ambassador Vexnar of the Galactic Conclave. We have been observing your planet for some time." Carter cleared his throat. "Welcome to Earth. I am Commander Liam Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet." The alien's eyes blinked in sequence. "We have decided your species has finally evolved enough to join our community of worlds." A murmur of excitement passed through the control room. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, humanity now had its answer. "We are honored," Carter replied carefully. "What does this mean for Earth?" "You will be classified as a Class 4 civilization," the Vexnar said. "This designation is based on our assessment of your physical capabilities, technological advancement, and emotional stability." Foster frowned. "And what exactly is a Class 4? The alien's upper body swayed slightly. "It is a probationary status. You will serve the more advanced species until you prove worthy of advancement." Carter's smile froze on his face. "Serve? Yes. Your species will be assigned tasks suitable to your abilities. Your physical weakness and technological limitations make you ideal for certain roles that other species find undesirable." The control room fell silent. Carter felt anger building inside him, but kept his expression neutral. He had been a Marine before joining the space program. He knew when to fight and when to gather intelligence. "I see," he said. "And how many classes are there?" 7, replied the Vexnar. "The founding species are Class 1. My kind, the Vexnar, are Class 2. We administer the Conclave." "And what must we do to advance?" Carter asked. "Prove your worth. Though few species ever move beyond their assigned class." The alien's tone suggested this was simply a fact of life. "We will send transportation for your representatives in 7 days. You may bring 20 humans to begin integration into Conclave society." When the transmission ended, the room exploded with voices. "This is outrageous," shouted General Phillips. "They expect us to be their servants." "We should refuse," said Foster. "We won't be slaves to aliens." Carter raised his hand for silence. "We need to think strategically. If we refuse, we isolate ourselves from the galactic community. We need to learn more." "So we just accept their terms?" Phillips asked, his face red with anger. "We accept their invitation," Carter corrected. "That doesn't mean we accept their assessment of us." He looked around the room. Throughout human history, being underestimated has often been an advantage. Let's use it. 6 days later, Carter had assembled his team. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats, and engineers. The best Earth had to offer. Each was briefed on their real mission. Learn everything possible about the Conclave while appearing to accept their assigned role. "Remember," Carter told them during their final meeting, "show only what they expect to see. They think we're weak, primitive, and emotionally unstable. Let them think that." Dr. Samwells, a xenobiologist, smiled. "In other words, we play dumb." Carter nodded. "For now. The Vexnar have made a critical error. They've judged us by their standards without understanding what makes humans unique. We don't have the strongest bodies or the most advanced technology, but we have something they apparently lack: adaptability." Foster looked out the window at the stars. "So what's our long-term plan?" "We learn their weaknesses. We make allies. We find our place in this conclave," Carter said. "And then, when the time is right, we show them exactly how wrong they were about humanity." As the alien transport ship docked the next day, Carter stepped forward to greet their new masters with a respectful bow and a hidden smile. The game had begun. 6 months had passed since first contact. On the remote mining planet Terrafold 7, Colony Director Susan Miller wiped sweat from her brow and checked the air filters again. The toxic atmosphere outside would kill a human in minutes without protection. "Status report," she called to her team. Kelly Rodriguez, the colony's chief engineer, looked up from her tablet. Filters working at 98%. Gravity stabilizers holding steady despite the fluctuations. Susan nodded. Terrafold 7 was considered one of the worst assignments in the conclave. The atmosphere was toxic, the gravity shifted unpredictably, and large predators roamed outside the colony walls. The Vexnar had sent humans here because they expected many to die. They were wrong. "Production numbers?" Susan asked. Alan Banks, head of security, pulled up the data. "We're exceeding targets by 30% this month." "The Vexnar won't believe it." "They'll believe what we tell them," Susan replied. "Report only 20% of our actual output." The humans had learned quickly to hide their true abilities. When they arrived, the conclave had given them outdated equipment and minimal training. They were expected to fail. Instead, they thrived. In the mining control center, Ryan Peterson monitored the drill teams. Team 3 just hit a new vein of quantium. "It's the richest one we've found yet." Quantium was a rare mineral that powered faster than light travel. The conclave valued it above all else. They had sent humans to this dangerous planet thinking they were expendable. If they died trying to extract the mineral, it was an acceptable loss. Susan joined Ryan at the monitor. "Keep 10% off the books. Store it in Sector 12. Ryan nodded. They had been secretly stockpiling quantium and other valuable resources. The Vexnar had no idea. Outside the main compound, Alan Banks trained a new group of security personnel. They practiced with makeshift weapons designed by Kelly. The conclave had forbidden humans from having advanced weapons, giving them only basic stun batons for protection against local wildlife. "Remember," Alan told his team, "if a conclave inspector visits, these don't exist. Hide everything." Kelly had created their weapons by modifying mining equipment. The conclave didn't realize that humans were natural tinkerers. Give them basic tools, and they would build whatever they needed. In her office, Susan received a call from Earth. Commander Carter's face appeared on the screen. "Monthly check-in," he said. "How are things on Terrafold?" "Productive," Susan replied. "The Vexnar inspector visits tomorrow. We're ready for him." Carter nodded. "Remember to play your part. My position here on Nexus Prime is getting stronger. I've made contact with 3 more species who resent conclave rule." "The Drothi?" Susan asked. "Yes, their memory skills are incredible. They're documenting everything. The Morwen have also joined us. The conclave treats them like dumb muscle, but they're much smarter than anyone realizes." Susan smiled. "Just like they underestimate us." The next day, a sleek silver ship landed at the colony. Zorix 9, a tall, stick-like alien with purple skin, emerged. He was the quarterly inspector from the conclave. "Greetings, humans," he said, his voice cold. "I see you have not all perished yet." Susan bowed her head respectfully. "We are grateful for the opportunity to serve the conclave, honored inspector." Zorix 9 made a sound like rattling pebbles, the Vexnar version of dismissive laughter. "Show me your operation." Susan led him through a carefully prepared tour. The humans appeared to struggle with their equipment. They moved slowly and complained about the conditions. Hidden compartments concealed their best technology. Secret tunnels had been covered up. The real control center, with its advanced AI system named Shield, was disguised as a storage room. "Your production is adequate," Zorix 9 said at the end of the inspection. "Though your efficiency is poor compared to higher-class species, we are doing our best with our limited abilities," Susan said, eyes downcast. After the inspector left, The colony returned to its true nature, efficient, innovative, preparing. Kelly unveiled her newest creation, environmental suits that could withstand the toxic atmosphere for twice as long as Conclave models. The Vexnar think we're weak, she said. They have no idea what humans can do when backed into a corner. Susan looked at the stars through the dome ceiling. And they won't know until it's too late. Ryan Peterson wiped dust from his face and stared at the tunnel wall. His drill had hit something that wasn't rock. The metal bit had sparked and stopped. "Hey, Kelly, you might want to see this," he called over the radio to the colony's engineer. 20 minutes later, Kelly Rodriguez arrived with her tools. Susan Miller, the colony director, came too. They stood in the narrow tunnel 3 miles beneath the planet's surface. "What did you find?" Susan asked. Ryan pointed at the wall. The drill hit something solid. Not rock or mineral. "Look at the pattern." Kelly ran her scanner over the surface. Her eyes widened. "There's a hollow space behind this section. And the material. It's not natural. It's some kind of metal, but nothing I've ever seen before." Susan looked around carefully. "Can you break through without causing a cave-in?" Kelly nodded. "Give me an hour." True to her word, Kelly carefully cut a hole in the strange wall. Behind it was a large chamber that didn't look natural. The walls were smooth and covered with strange symbols. The room was filled with objects that looked like technology, but unlike anything they had seen before. "This isn't Conclave tech," Susan said, walking slowly around the chamber. "It looks older, much older." In the center of the room stood a pedestal with glowing crystals. Kelly scanned them carefully. "These are data storage devices," she said. "Incredibly advanced. They're still active after who knows how long." Ryan touched one of the walls. "Who built this place?" "I don't know," Susan replied. "But I bet the Conclave would be very interested in it." Kelly looked up sharply. "You're not going to tell them, are you?" Susan smiled. "Not yet. First, we need to understand what we found. Ryan, help Kelly gather these crystals. I want everything documented, and then hidden before anyone from the Conclave visits again." Over the next few weeks, Kelly worked day and night to understand the ancient technology. She built a special computer that could read the data crystals without being detected by Conclave systems. "I've translated some of it," she told Susan one night in the secret lab they had built. "These were made by a species called the predecessors. They existed millions of years ago, before the Conclave." "What happened to them?" Susan asked. Kelly shook her head. "I don't know yet, but these crystals contain information about weapons, ships, and technology far beyond what even the Conclave has now." "And locations," Ryan added, pointing to a star map on the screen. "These points show other sites like this one, hidden across the galaxy." Susan contacted Commander Carter on Nexus Prime, the Conclave capital world. His face appeared on a secure channel. "We found something," she said, and explained their discovery. Carter's eyes widened. "This changes everything. The ruling species of the Conclave claim their power comes from being naturally superior. If we can prove an older civilization existed, and they just found their technology, their whole system falls apart." Susan finished. "Keep this absolutely secret," Carter warned. "I've been making progress here. The Drothi have been helping me map the Conclave's political structure, and the Morwen have agreed to provide physical support when the time comes." "When will that be?" Susan asked. "Not yet," Carter replied. "We need more allies, more resources. The Vexenar and Kreldok have ruled for thousands of years. They won't give up power easily." After the call ended, Susan looked at the ancient artifacts. "Keep working on translating these," she told Kelly. "Focus on the weapons technology." "You think we'll need it?" Ryan asked. "I hope not," Susan said. "But the Conclave needs to learn that classifying humans as weak and primitive was their biggest mistake." Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, Commander Carter sat in a small room with representatives from 6 different species. None were from the ruling classes. "My friends," he said to the gathered aliens, "humans have found something that will change the balance of power in the conclave forever. Are you ready to stand with us when the time comes?" One by one, they agreed. The Drothi, with their perfect memories. The Morwen, with their physical strength. The insect-like Ziktai, masters of stealth. And others. The alliance that would one day be called the Ascendant Coalition was forming, built on a simple truth. Any species that could be underestimated could also be the one to change everything. 2 years had passed since humans joined the Galactic Conclave. On Nexus Prime, the capital world, Commander Liam Carter walked through the grand halls with his head slightly bowed. Around him, the ruling species moved with the confidence of those born to power. They barely noticed him. This was exactly what he wanted. "Another mining report, Class 4. A tall Vexnar asked, not bothering to use Carter's name. "Yes, High Administrator," Carter said, keeping his voice humble. "The Terrafold 7 colony continues to meet its quotas." The Vexnar waved a hand dismissively and moved on. Carter allowed himself a small smile. The Vexnar had no idea that humans were now operating 17 colonies across the galaxy, all exceeding expectations while appearing to struggle. Later that day, Carter met with his allies in a small room hidden beneath a food storage facility. The Drothi representative, Ixtil, blinked her large compound eyes. "The Vexnar are confused," she reported. "Human performance data contradicts their classification models. You consistently survive in environments where you should fail, yet show no signs of advanced technology." Carter nodded. "That's exactly what we want them to think. What about the other colonies?" Morwen Representative Grak, whose species resembled large, muscular bears, spoke next. "All 17 human mining operations report the same. They appear basic but achieve impossible results. The Vexnar suspect nothing because they believe their observations over data. They see simple humans using outdated equipment and assume you are just lucky. Their arrogance blinds them," said Ziktai, the insect-like spy master. "My scouts report that the Kreldok military force is preparing to decommission the human colony on Helios 9. The quantium deposits there are nearly depleted." Carter's face darkened. "Decommission? You mean kill our people?" "Yes." Ziktai's antennae twitched. "In 3 standard days, once a Class 4 species is no longer useful at a location, they are considered disposable." "Not this time," Carter said. He pressed a button on his wrist device. "Alert Colony Director Frank West on Helios 9. Initiate Defense Protocol Alpha." On Helios 9, Frank West received the message and gathered his team. The colony looked basic from the outside. Simple metal buildings with visible rust, outdated equipment, and tired-looking humans. But beneath the surface, they had built something very different. "The Kreldok are coming to eliminate us," Frank told his team. "It's time to show them what humans can really do." They activated defenses hidden beneath the planet's surface. Weapons made with technology from the ancient predecessors. Shields strong enough to withstand orbital bombardment. The Kreldok would expect no resistance from a weak species like humans. 3 days later, 5 Kreldok warships appeared in orbit around Helios 9. The Kreldok were reptilian warriors with natural armor and a belief in their own superiority. Their commander, Skarath, opened a channel to the colony. "Humans of Helios 9, he hissed. "Your usefulness has ended. Prepare for termination." Frank West appeared on the screen, his expression calm. "We reject your termination order, Commander Skarath. We suggest you leave peacefully." The Kreldok laughed, a harsh sound like breaking bones. "A Class 4 species does not reject orders. Prepare to die." The Kreldok ships fired their weapons. To their shock, the blasts were absorbed by shields that shouldn't have existed. Then, from beneath the planet's surface, defense towers emerged, firing precision beams that disabled the Kreldok ships without destroying them. Within hours, the entire Kreldok force had been captured, not killed. Humans had decided to show mercy, a concept alien to the Conclave hierarchy. Frank West sent a message to Carter. Alpha successful. All Krell captured without casualties. Awaiting further instructions. On Nexus Prime, Carter called an emergency meeting of the Ascended Coalition. Representatives from 20 formerly subjugated species gathered in secret. The time for hiding is over, Carter said. The Krell will soon discover their missing ships. We must move quickly now. The Drothi nodded. We have documented all conclave violations against lower-class species. The evidence is overwhelming. Carter looked at the faces around him. Different species united by a common cause. Tomorrow, we show the conclave that their classification system was their undoing. They thought physical strength and advanced technology were everything. They failed to value adaptability, creativity, and cooperation. As the representatives left to prepare, Carter sent one final message to Earth. Humanities, tell our people the time has come. The biggest mistake the universe ever made was underestimating us. We're about to correct that error. The Great Hall of the Conclave was in chaos. Representatives from all 7 classes of species filled the enormous room. At the center, on a raised platform, stood the High Chancellor of the Vexnar, Vex Tull. His 8 eyes blinked rapidly in anger. Explain yourself, human, he demanded, pointing at Commander Liam Carter, who stood calmly before him. News of the Krell defeat had spread quickly. The ruling species could not believe that a Class 4 civilization had captured an entire military fleet without a single casualty. I am happy to explain, Carter said, his voice carrying across the hall. Gone was the humble bow and quiet tone. He stood straight, confident. But first, I believe we should include all interested parties. He pressed a button on his wrist device. The doors to the Great Hall opened, and representatives from the Ascended Coalition entered. Species from classes 3 through 7, previously not allowed in high-level meetings, filed in and stood beside Carter. What is the meaning of this? Vex Tull demanded. Lower classes are not permitted in the Great Hall during emergency sessions. That rule has just changed, Carter replied, along with many others. The Krell military commander, a large reptilian named Draxor, slammed his fist on the table. The human colony must be destroyed immediately. They have committed an act of war by capturing our ships. Your ships were sent to murder our people, Carter responded calmly. We acted in self-defense, and we showed mercy by capturing rather than killing your forces. Mercy? Draxor spat the word, a primitive concept from a weak species. Carter smiled. You asked why we hid our true capabilities. This reaction is exactly why. Throughout human history, we've learned that revealing your full strength often makes you a target. So we adapted, as humans always do. He activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. Images appeared showing human history, cave paintings, ancient wars, modern cities, space exploration. Humanity isn't defined by physical strength, but by our ability to overcome challenges. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive tendencies. Carter moved forward, his voice growing stronger. We don't have natural armor like the Krell or 8 eyes like the Vexnar. Instead, we evolved something more valuable: adaptability. The hall fell silent as Carter revealed the extent of human influence throughout the conclave. Colonies that had created revolutionary technologies, diplomatic alliances with dozens of species, and defense capabilities that the ruling classes never suspected. And we found something else, Carter continued. Evidence that the conclave's technology isn't original to your species. Gasps filled the room. Vex Tull's skin changed color from blue to deep purple, a sign of extreme anger. Lies, he shouted. The Drothi representative stepped forward. Her compound eyes reflected the light as she spoke. We have documented proof. The Vexnar and Krell discovered the technology of the predecessors, an ancient species that vanished millions of years ago. You built your empire on their achievements, not your own. Carter nodded. Yet you classified other species as inferior because they hadn't made the same discoveries. The Morwen representative, Grak, growled his agreement. You called us stupid because we value cooperation over domination. You called the humans weak because they lack natural armor. Yet they captured your most advanced warships without a single death. Vextul looked around the room, seeing the unified front of previously subjugated species. His voice lowered. What do you want? Justice, Carter replied simply. The classification system ends today. All species will have equal standing in a new conclave. No more masters and servants. And if we refuse, Draxor challenged. Carter's expression remained calm. Then you face not just humans, but all the species you've underestimated and mistreated. We control half your mining operations, a third of your food production, and more importantly, we now understand the predecessor technology better than you do. He paused, letting the message sink in. We don't want war. We want partnership. Is the Conclave capable of that? Vextul's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. The old order was crumbling before him. The species they had dismissed as inferior had outmaneuvered them completely. Perhaps, he said finally, it is time for the Conclave to evolve. Carter nodded. The biggest mistake the universe made was creating a system that valued the wrong qualities. Together, we can build something better. Around the hall, representatives from all species watched as history changed before their eyes. The age of classification was ending. A new era was about to begin. 3 days after the confrontation in the Great Hall, negotiations began. The Conclave had never seen anything like it. Species from all classifications sat at the same table, each with an equal voice. Ambassador Nickel Wright led the human diplomatic team. She had spent years resolving conflicts on Earth before joining the space program. Now she faced her greatest challenge, helping create a new galactic order. We propose a complete restructuring, Nickel said, her calm voice carrying across the table. No more classification by species. Instead, a government where all have representation. Vextul, still serving as temporary leader, shook his head. Impossible. Some species are naturally superior. The Vexnar have administered the Conclave for thousands of years. And look where that got you, Nickel replied. Your empire almost collapsed because you underestimated everyone who was different from you. The negotiations continued for weeks. The Vexnar and Kreldok fought against change at every step. They had ruled for too long to give up power easily. They won't budge, Nickel told Carter during a private meeting. They still believe they're superior, despite all evidence to the contrary. Carter looked thoughtful. Then we need to prove the value of cooperation in a way they can't deny. The next day, Nickel introduced a new concept to the negotiating table. We propose a test case, she said, a collaborative project with representatives from multiple species working together as equals. What kind of project? Asked a Zentheri representative, her silver skin shimmering in the light. A crisis that affects us all, Nickel replied. The Centauri plague has spread to 12 worlds. So far, no single species has found a cure. I propose a team with members from different classes working together. The Vexnar were skeptical but agreed. They believed the experiment would fail and prove their superiority. A team was assembled. Dr. Gray Howard, a human medical researcher, Zentheri geneticist Moltha, Drathi data analyst Ixtil, and even a young Vexnar scientist named Vexilin, who secretly questioned the old ways. They were given a laboratory on a neutral space station. For the first time, species worked together as equals, each contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. Greg brought human creativity and problem-solving skills. The humans' history of fighting diseases gave them insights others lacked. Moltha contributed genetic expertise far beyond human capabilities. Ixtil processed data with perfect recall, spotting patterns no one else could see. And Vexilin provided knowledge of conclave medical technology. The plague mutates too quickly for traditional vaccines, Greg said after a week of research. We need a different approach. What if we combine technologies? Suggested Vexilin, earning surprised looks from everyone. A Vexenar suggesting learning from lesser species was unheard of. They worked day and night. Each failure became a stepping stone rather than a defeat. Ideas flowed freely, without concern for who suggested them. After just 10 days, 1/10 the time the conclave had estimated, they had a breakthrough. "It works," Greg exclaimed as their treatment neutralized the plague in test samples, a cure created by 4 different species working together. News of their success spread rapidly throughout the conclave. The cure was immediately produced and distributed to affected worlds. Thousands of lives were saved. At the next negotiation session, Nickel let the results speak for themselves. "This is what happens when we value diverse perspectives instead of ranking them." Even the most stubborn Vexenar could not argue with success. The old classification system had taken over 3 months to develop a partial treatment for a previous plague outbreak. The collaborative team had found a complete cure in days. Slowly, the negotiations began to make progress. The idea of a new conclave based on cooperation rather than dominance gained support. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground. "It won't be easy," Nickel told Carter as they reviewed the latest draft agreement. "Changing a system this old takes time." Carter nodded. "But it's happening. The universe is finally learning what humans have always known. Our greatest strength comes from working together." As the negotiations continued, more collaborative projects were launched. Each success became another nail in the coffin of the old classification system. The biggest mistake the universe had made was starting to be corrected, one step at a time. 5 years after first contact, the restructured Galactic Conclave celebrated its first anniversary. The grand ceremony took place on Earth, a location that would have been unthinkable under the old system. Commander Liam Carter, now Earth's senior representative, stood on the stage beside leaders from dozens of worlds. He looked out at the crowd, humans mingling with aliens of all shapes and sizes. No longer were species classified by their perceived worth. Each contributed their unique strengths to a cooperative galaxy. "1 year ago today, we signed the Unity Accord," announced Vextel, who had surprised everyone by supporting the new system once he saw its potential. "We ended thousands of years of division and began a new chapter in galactic history." The classification system had been abolished. In its place were specialized councils representing various fields of expertise. Earth, once designated as a backward world, now hosted the Conclave Center for Innovation, where species from across the galaxy came to share ideas. After the ceremony, Carter walked through the halls of the New Earth Diplomatic Center with his aide, Lieutenant Jason Powell. "Hard to believe how much has changed," Powell said, looking out the window at ships from dozens of worlds docking at the orbiting station. 5 years ago, we were classified as servants. Now we're equal partners." Carter nodded. "The biggest mistake the universe ever made was underestimating humans." Powell smiled. "I guess they learned their lesson." "No," Carter shook his head. "The biggest mistake was believing that any species could be judged by a single metric. The Vexenar thought physical strength and technological advancement were everything. They failed to value adaptability, creativity, and determination. As they walked, they passed the new collaborative research wing. Through the glass walls, they could see teams of diverse species working together. The success of the plague cure had inspired similar projects across the conclave. Problems that had remained unsolved for centuries were being tackled with fresh perspectives. Carter's communication device buzzed. It was a message from Susan Miller, the former colony director who now captained the exploration vessel Horizon. "Liam, we found something extraordinary." Her voice came through clearly. "A habitable planet beyond the borders of known space. And there's more. We've detected signs of intelligent life." Carter and Powell exchanged looks of surprise. New intelligent life was rare in the charted regions of the galaxy. "We're requesting permission to establish first contact," Susan continued. "The crew has voted unanimously to proceed." The Horizon carried a crew of 20 humans: Drathi, Morwen, Zintheri, Vexinar, and even 2 Kreldok. Once bitter enemies, they now worked side by side as explorers. "Permission granted," Carter replied. "But remember the most important lesson we've learned. Never underestimate any species, no matter how they appear. That's a mistake we won't repeat." "Understood," Susan said. "We'll approach with respect and openness. Horizon out." As the communication ended, Carter looked thoughtful. "What do you think they'll find?" Powell asked. "I don't know," Carter replied. "But I'm glad we're the ones making first contact. 5 years ago, the Conclave would have immediately classified a new species and decided their worth. Now we know better." Later that evening, Carter stood on the observation deck, watching Earth rotate slowly below. Ambassador Nicole Wright joined him. "The Unity Council approved your proposal," she said. "The archive of predecessor technology will be open to all species. No more secrets." Carter nodded. "Knowledge should belong to everyone." "Some of the older Vexnars still struggle with that concept," Nicole said. "Change isn't easy after thousands of years of thinking one way." "But they're trying," Carter pointed out. "That's what matters." A flash of light caught their attention as the horizon jumped to faster than light speed, beginning its journey to the newly discovered world. Carter watched until it disappeared among the stars. "What do you hope they find out there?" Nicole asked. "New friends," Carter replied. "New ideas, new perspectives. The universe is vast, and we've only just begun to understand it." As they stood watching the stars, Carter thought about how far they had come. From a species deemed primitive and weak to key players in a galactic community. All because the Conclave had made one critical error. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the ability to unite others toward a common goal. The biggest mistake the universe ever made had become its greatest opportunity.